To hear your views, you can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. My name is Edmond, Kizito, your host. On Spectrum tonight, Members of Parliament call for a fresh probe into the energy sector in light of the current crisis. What are their concerns and possible lessons that the country can take to avoid another energy crisis? Uganda is currently facing a power generation crisis that has prompted power distributor Umeme to commence the rationing of power, also known as load shedding. Uganda faced this problem in the past, prompting government to privatize the energy sector and also contract independent power generators to connect power generated during using diesel generators to the national grid. Diesel generated power is normally more expensive than hydroelectric power. Recently, it emerged that government had not paid the power companies who urgently need the money to buy fuel which they use in this generation. Parliament has, however, delayed sanctioning a supplementary request for 61 billion shillings, which is needed to supplement the 31 billion shillings provided for the energy sector under the vote on account to pay off the arrears. The independent power producers reacted by switching off their thermal plants, bringing about a shortfall, a move that MPs have described as an act of blackmail. Now this crisis has once again resurrected the debate on sustainable energy, with many people arguing that government must explore other forms of energy. MPs are, however, saying there's a deeper problem that emanates largely from the manner in which the energy sector has been run over the past years. They have also called for a new probe. General Salim Saleh did carry out an investigation into this particular sector, but the report is yet to be published. So tonight we will seek to understand what issues Parliament is raising and explore if at all there are measures that can be taken to have a better energy sector. Our guests tonight, we expect to be joined by Hon.Samuel Odonga Otto, Chairman of the Governance Assurance Committee. But in the studio right now, I have Mr. Dickens Kamigisha, Executive Director at AFIEGO, which is the African Institute for Energy Governance. You're most welcome, Mr. Kamigisha.
Yeah, thank you, Edmond, and good evening, listeners.
Let's try to look at the origin of this crisis. Right now, we're faced with an energy crisis, shortfalls of 50 megawatts per day by the day and 120 megawatts by night. We had this problem some time back, but recently we thought we had got onto the top of it. Why are we seeing load shedding coming back to us?
Yeah, thank you very much, Edmond. If you look at what is happening in the electricity sector, I think it is a reflection of what is happening in the country. And the load shedding coming back, I think it was clear that it was going to be back. Because right from the time when we started restructuring, privatizing the electricity sector, I think there was the government didn't sit down to ask itself whether we had the capacity. We had the private sector, which was powerful enough to manage our affairs. Instead, we brought here the foreign companies, and the foreign companies came here with a lot of expertise. I think they had more knowledge on the issues of electricity, much more than the government. And to the extent that most of the companies which were created, the Uganda Electricity Generation Company, the Uganda Electricity Transmission Company, the Uganda Electricity Distribution Company, you know, those are government companies. The shareholders is Minister of Finance and the State Minister for Privatization. Those are two shareholders for the three companies. But these companies themselves didn't have the capacity actually to manage. So along the way, you see Uganda Electricity Generation Company bringing here ESCOM to manage on its behalf. Then Uganda Distribution Company bringing here Umeme and ESCOM actually at first to manage the distribution. So along the way, we started asking, why do you have two companies doing the same thing? You have the government company, it is still there. You have the private company is also doing the same thing. So in a way, actually the cost started increasing then. But the most absurd thing is that when those private companies came in, they came with a lot of experience. Then the government companies didn't have the experience to monitor. So that's what happened actually. That even in terms of managing the sector, the distribution companies didn't care. For them, what they were looking at is how much they were making. So while we privatized in order to reduce the power losses, the companies that came here to do that actually decided not to invest anything. In the concession agreement to Umeme, where the Uganda distribution company had agreed with Umeme that it should do everything possible, make investments to reduce the power losses. Actually, there is no agreement to say that actually per year they would reduce so much. And there is no even evidence today show that Umeme has been investing so much to reduce the power losses. For them, what we also don't know is how much actually Umeme collects in terms of profits. What it has been telling government is that it has been making losses. So along the way, instead of making, imagine if we were to save around the 33% of losses that have been getting lost of the electricity that we generate, then there is a possibility that actually we would not need a lot of thermal generators. But because the companies were not interested, there was no incentive actually to reduce the power losses. For them, they didn't invest in the reduction of power losses. Along the way, they advised the government, for us to continue moving, you have to give us power. Because for them, they are to distribute. Umeme is to distribute. So it has to get power from the transmission company.
Yes.
So the transmission company advised the government, you bring in generators. And the challenge is that because for us, we operate in a crisis to help the government officials actually get their deals. At the time of bringing here the thermal companies, we didn't also plan. Because under the international practice, you have a situation where, these generators, certain generators of a certain quality, and they consume minimal fuel. Then other generators actually consume a lot of fuel, and they are very expensive. They are very cheap when you are buying.
Right.
So the companies go and buy those ones which are cheap, but consume a lot of fuel. So because the government didn't have standards of the kind of generators we should bring here, so the companies just said, we have brought these generators and this is so much that we are going to be consuming per day, per month. So the fuel that we use in Uganda is too much. And because we didn't plan, even up to now, Uganda Electricity Regulatory Authority that is supposed to regulate doesn't have actual standards for the kind of generators that we should use. So along the way, when the Sarimsare Commission was instituted, it discovered that actually companies were inflating their fuel consumption rates to the tune of over 2 million liters per year. And each, especially like Agureko had set the consumption rate at around 0.2 something cost per liter per kilowatt. So in other words, if you were to get the 2 million times the amount per liter, it is too much money. And actually the 2 million was for per month that the companies get in terms of inflation, of inflating the rates. So along the way,
you're probably making 4 or 5 billion every month.
Yes, every month
in hot air.
So actually, even in the on 10th December, when the technical committee that was instituted by the Minister of Energy to implement the Sarimsare report also indicated that it was not agreeing with the report of saying that 2 million liters were being inflated by the companies per month. For them, they said actually it was only 220,000 liters which was being inflated.
Right.
But they didn't also have evidence to say that actually the report was wrong. And the fact that they indicated that actually there was inflation, whether it is lesser than what the report had said, it was a mistake for us to say. And again, ERA went on to say that it is going to investigate and then set standards for the consumption of generators. But this is a situation where you have already entered into what? Contracts with the companies, and the contracts are running. So even if you were to investigate, it would be very hard because it would, yeah, definitely, you would enter into legal problems. And so, but for me, I think the most of the challenges actually, and actually after when in that technical committee report of ERA and the other government companies, they concluded that the report was not accurate. Instead, it was not those problems of technical which caused problems. What they said actually the problems in the electricity sector is the drought that reduced the waters in Lake Victoria. It is the delay of the construction of Jagai. So, but if we look at what has been happening, definitely I don't think that the crisis in Uganda's electricity sector is the drought only, or the delay of Jagai. Okay. Because you remember, Edmond, that we constructed Chira Dam to produce 200 megawatts. We renovated the Own Falls Dam in 2001 to produce 180 megawatts. Those would be 380 megawatts. Yes. So if all of them were producing at the capacity, we wouldn't be having even all these generators and would be having a lot of power. But because of again corruption in the sector, we couldn't produce. So there is no guarantee that actually after Bujagar, which they are saying it is the problem, because Bujagar today is the most expensive almost dam being constructed in the world. If you compare dams which are being constructed even in Sudan where it is not stable, the dams constructed in Ghana, Bujagar remains the most expensive dam. 250 megawatts. Yes, megawatts at over $1 billion US. Yes. When actually some other in other countries they are constructing dams of 250 megawatts at around $700 million US, and that's what actually that was the cost, the original cost of Bujagar. But they kept on inflating it. So right now we are in around the 1.3 billion US. Right. So if you calculate that and you put it in terms of kilowatts, it is going to be still expensive. And Ugandans should not really believe that what the government is promising, that once we complete the Jagar Dam, that power is going to be reduced. Let's talk about the capacity. Installed capacity countrywide is 596 megawatts. Yes. Demand is 340 megawatts. Output right now is 300 megawatts. How do you explain that? Water levels have fallen when they opened the second channel. Yes. But how do you explain it? That's a huge shortfall, 200 megawatts. But of course, ultimately, especially the way, at least if you've been reading, you look at the way they had designed those dams. They designed them on the basis that the force of water would be the one to generate power. Yes. So there is no, at least what they are doing in Ujagari, they are trying to put the power dams down. Right. So that at least even little water can help to push them. Yes. But in the other ones, it is the force of water. So if you had water that was passing through one dam to produce say 60 megawatts before the improvement in the Own Falls Dam, and now you improve the Own Falls Dam to produce 180 megawatts, and then on the other side parallel you want a second dam to produce 200 megawatts. It doesn't. You are talking of the same water. So the force cannot really produce that power. So it was totally futile. We didn't have to build another dam in the same place. And you remember what happened is that 2 dams were contracted to do feasibility study for Chira Dam. Yes. The first company said actually it was not possible to produce 200 megawatts from Chira Dam because it was parallel to Own Falls Dam, the existing dam, and it was going to share the same water. So for that matter, it could not. But again, the other company, the second company, which was contracted jointly by the government of Uganda and the World Bank, said actually it was okay. It was going to produce power. Whereas not. Yes, and what happened is that the other first company which had recommended not to build that dam, actually it was right, but they rejected its position. Yes. Even in addition to that, the former minister, actually the former immediate minister here, Ronek, actually I think in 2008, we were in a meeting with the engineer Sebowa, who is currently suspended of the Electricity Regulatory Authority. Yes. Ronek said that actually we also advised the government not to construct the parallel dam. Because his background is in water. He was managing the from national water. Actually, and he's an engineer. He's an engineer, a hydraulic engineer, and Sebowa was not a hydraulic engineer. But in that meeting, Sebowa was saying, no, it is not right. So along the way, actually, he came. Sebowa was saying what? What did he say? Sebowa was saying, no, that was not true. Actually, for him, was saying that he was giving the wrong answer. Yes, Ronek was saying that it was false. And he didn't know what he was doing. Oh my God. Because the issue was not being parallel to the Own Falls Dam. The issue was that the water had reduced in the what?
But, I mean, obviously, this is ridiculous. Obviously, this should be obvious even to a very simple mind. You don't have to be hydraulic engineer. You have the same amount of water, and you want to double its output. It does not work.
Yes, and of course, you know, that is the whole thing, is that if you are one person, you cannot divide the...
Well, but we have a lot of technical people. Engineer Simon Odonga, he was in UEB. He's a technical man, very, very competent in his field. How could these people fail to advise government?
No, but of course, I don't think that in Uganda here we are lacking actually
technocrats,
experts.
Yeah,
we have very wonderful experts.
But politics takes over.
But politics, everything,
and ignorance.
Everything that we do is politics. And actually, the politics, the way it is played in again in another very clever way, that they cause a crisis. And once they cause a crisis, actually, technocrats are not given time to provide the advice.
Yeah.
No. The companies, the government, the politicians actually decided to take what? Decisions on the basis that, you know, they bypass procurement, they bypass even the laws. Even that is what is happening in the Chogamu when some of these people are being what? Because they knew Chogamu was going to take place, but they delayed.
They had to wait because it suited their needs.
You remember in
they were in a crisis.
You remember in 2008 and 2007.
Yes.
When actually myself, I'm one of the people who wrote an article in the papers saying that the contract which was given to Jacobson to install generators in Mutundu was done wrongly by error. Afterwards, IGG investigated and actually also confirmed that it was not the right thing. The first bidder, rather the company that was taken as a second bidder was the best, but they gave the Jacobson, and it was because of not because actually the second bidder was not good, but because there was already some kickbacks behind.
Yes.
So ultimately, the darkness was increasing, and what they did was that, you know, I think also the president intervened and said, no, for the time being we need power.
Yes.
And we have to do everything possible to get power.
Electricity.
So along the actual